There's going to be a citrus quiz at the end of the course. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Edible Education. Thank you for braving the elements tonight and joining us on this historic occasion. Tonight marks the debut of the 6th time that Edible Education has been offered at UC Berkeley, and this year we have the great pleasure of hosting it at the Haas School of Business, which is appropriate. It's been hosted at the School of Journalism, of course, and the College of Natural Resources. But given the fact that the food business globally is estimated to be over $7 trillion a year, it makes sense that we ought to host it here at the Haas School for this year. And this has some illustrious history. Edible Education is the brainchild of Alice Waters. It was her vision 6 years ago, her eternal energy to educate, to bring this course to life. And she had the good fortune of working with people like Michael Pollan, who will be joining us a little later in the semester, and of course Mark Bittman and others. Very distinguished group of people. And this semester we are delighted to bring some really stellar people to campus. Now, I just need to remember what I did with that. Okay. So, we're here at a really critical moment in time. This is a moment of inflection, really, for our society, potentially our democracy. And as I think you'll come to learn in this course, that food is really what connects all of us and brings us together and links us in an ecological system of interdependency. And what we really hope to do this semester is bring that to life for you and help you become activated, if you will, as a citizen eater, as a actionist, an activist, as a conscious being in the food system. And this quote is something I know that animates Alice deeply throughout her entire life in the world of food. It's a great honor, really, to be here tonight working with Alice. Truly a legend in the food world, and she's going to present the first lecture this evening. Before we do that, though, I need to do a little bit of housekeeping with you. This class is unusual in that it has about 200 registered students from all across the university, and then we make the remaining seats available to the public. So if you're in the public and you're here in the class, we'd be delighted for you to just be patient with us as we get through a little bit of the housekeeping. But we're going to try to make this as engaging for you as possible as well. I also just wanted to introduce to you the team that's bringing this to you. I'm Will Rosenzweig. I am a fellow at the Institute for Business and Social Impact here at Haas. I was counting on my fingers earlier today. This is my 18th year teaching here at Haas. I was the first person to teach a social entrepreneurship class at a major business school back in 1998. And some people have called me the Johnny Appleseed of social entrepreneurship education as I went around the world and taught other people how to teach that subject. Now, it's a core and favorite topic in many business schools around the world, and we have Berkeley really to thank as being an innovator in that space, as they have been in many other areas. I have office hours every week preceding this class from 3 to 4 in the professional faculty suite, which is F502. If you can't make those hours, email me and we can set something else up, either in person or on Skype. This course would not be possible without the diligent efforts of Rohini. Where's Rohini? Where are you? Can you stand up? You're shy, but go ahead, stand up. That's Rohini. Yes, big round of applause for Rohini. And Rohini's our graduate student instructor, and we have 3 great readers, teaching assistants. Brian is up there, wave Brian, Michaela, and Ryan over here. And be nice to them, they're going to be reading your papers. Also, I want to acknowledge Hannah Love from Alice's office. She's been just a phenomenal partner. Hannah, big hand for Hannah. She's been helping us with all of the intricate logistics. And I'd also like to thank Steve Silverstein, who has generously provided the funding for us to live stream this around the world and videotape it, where it will be archived on the Edible Schoolyard Project website. So for those of you that have friends and family that would find these lectures interesting, you can tell them they can watch it live and participate that way, or they'll be able to watch the video archival footage. So a couple things about the course. I like to just go over the objectives with you quickly. One of the objectives here is to help you understand how the food system works and is structured, how it exists today, what the various relationships, dependencies, policies, incentives, for good or bad or worse, how it exists today and how we are all sort of complicit and implicit in this really remarkably complex system that is gearing up to somehow feed 9 billion people on the planet. It's no small task. We want you to understand your own role in the food system and how the choices you make each day, whether they're conscious or unconscious, play into that food system. And one of the hopes is that you'll wake up to the way you eat and the way you spend money and the way you influence others, and how each of those little actions plays into the overall output or outcomes in the food system. We'd like to help you clarify your own values. Your values are what you care about. This is thinking ahead and thinking about developing a long-term vision, but also to think about how you can manifest your values in action. How in the business world we call this operationalizing your values for competitive advantage. This is where the food system meets the food movement. Okay, the food movement is where you want to move the food system. Okay, and to do that, you have to be really clear about your values. And you'll hear a little bit more about that today to get you started. But I hope one of the things you'll do is emerge from the class with a clarity about your values and how you want to bring them into action. And again, by the end of the class, maybe perhaps in your second paper, you'll be able to articulate actually what are you going to do? What's going to really infuriate you this semester? What's going to get you riled up, on edge, something that you just want to change? And how are you going to go do it? What's going to be your personal action plan? Are you going to go start a company? You're going to go work and change a law? You're going to go create some new tool in the marketplace that aids in creating better access? Whatever it's going to be, that's one of the things we want you to come out with. And then, importantly, one of the things that's so exciting about this class to me is that you're all coming from different backgrounds. We have biology majors, engineering majors, computer majors, public health majors, all in this room. So one of the things I'm going to hopefully do is help you see how people's different educational backgrounds manifest in terms of their own livelihoods and the way they're making a difference in the food system. And we'll showcase the paths of illustrious alumni from this institution, starting with Alice Waters tonight. So one of the themes for the course, an overarching theme this year, this is a little bit new, is I'd like to explore the concept of transparency. I personally feel that this is an idea that is going to lead to breakthroughs in the food system. So I just want to plant that seed with you as you think about questions. You know, I was struck today that that really neither of the readings, the Civil Eats reading or the John Latham reading, mentioned the word transparency. I found that to be kind of interesting. But think about transparency throughout the semester, and we'll see if we can develop a perspective on it. So here's how the class is going to work each week. We're going to have our weekly readings. Really important for you to do the readings. You'll get a lot more out of the class. We will have a class meeting. We'll review the readings a little bit. We might underline things. We'll ask you to send in a question every week, you registered students, to B courses. We're going to pick some of those questions out and then present them to our speakers. Some weeks we may ask you for a take action recommendation, something you thought of or something you did to take action. We're going to have a lot of fantastic guest lectures. We've got experts in public policy, in biology, in the microbiome, in labor, in farming. I mean, it's an amazing group of people. We have all the leaderless leaders of the food movement coming to this class this semester. So we're going to emphasize that they're going to get the lion's share of the time in front of you here. Like I mentioned, we'll do a take action excerpt, and then we'll do alumni pathways. So one of the things for those of you that came on Eventbrite, you have to get a new ticket every week. We have to kind of fluctuate based on the registration in the course, which tends to change over the first 3 weeks. So go to Eventbrite at 12 noon on Thursday, the day after this course. Okay, we have technology in this class. How many people here have an Iclicker? Okay, we're going to test the Iclicker in a minute. We would appreciate it if you don't use your computers or your phones in the class. I know some of you are taking notes. I just find that for the speakers, it's kind of distracting. So I would appreciate it if you would put down your laptops, especially when you have the guest speakers. If you want to take notes, bring an old-fashioned notebook. That's a great way to do it. If you want to tweet or Instagram or do some kind of conveyance that you are here with living legends, you can do that at the beginning or the end of the class. I don't mind you spreading the word about it, but we would appreciate it if you don't, videotape or live stream or Facebook Live while we're going at it here. So Rohini, why don't you come up, and we're going to test the Iclickers in just a second. So attendance is taken by Iclicker. We're going to ask you to reveal your presence each week. This is a pass, no pass class. It's a 2-unit class. And just to remind everybody that the ethical code of conduct here at UC Berkeley is you can't give your Iclicker to anybody else to check you in for the class. If that happens, you automatically don't pass the class.
Both parties don't pass the class.
So here's a multiple choice question for all of you that are here. If you want to test the Iclicker, are you ready, Rohini?
We are ready.
Okay, so are you present? A, yes. B, no. See how many wise guys we've got in the class here.
We'll give you about 10 more seconds.
Okay, great. Okay, we won't show that one.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, question. They're not working up there? Okay. You might want to...
Are you able to get it now?
Try it now. No? Okay. Well, we'll cut. If your Iclicker didn't work and you're here, just see one of the team members, and they'll check you off on the list manually, okay, tonight? And next week, come and sit closer. Back rows don't count. Okay. So assignments. As I mentioned, there's weekly readings. There's going to be a weekly question that you need to submit from the reading. You might want to reference something you read and then pose a question to the speaker. You need to get that in by 11:59 on Sunday nights, okay? So don't procrastinate on the readings. Get ahead of them. And then we're also going to ask 1, 2, or 3 in-class questions related to the content in the class, and you'll use your Iclicker for that. That encourages you to stay, during the lecture and to be present. We're also going to have 2 4- to 5-page papers throughout the semester, one kind of in the middle and one closer to the end. We'll provide you with some prompts. We want this to be a personal, kind of reflective paper that draws, again, on the readings and the content from the guest lectures. You all set? Okay. In terms of grading, for those of you that care at all about that, attendance plus the weekly questions plus the Iclicker questions in class is going to be 50% of your grade, and then the other 50% are the 2 papers, split 25 and 25. You've got some readings for this week. The readings are primarily provided by the speakers. We've asked each of the speakers to provide you with a recommendation of something they'd like you to read. Some of our guests are enormously talented writers. And for instance, Robert Reich will be here on February 1st. Next week, we have David Masamoto, who is one of the brilliant farmers of all time. He wrote one of my favorite books called Epitaph for a Peach. And if you want to read a beautiful book about fruit and farming and legacy, it's a wonderful read. So, really give yourself time, because the readings, as you'll see, like they are from this week, they're a mix. You'll get a news article, you'll get a scientific analysis, and you'll get a short story or a piece of fiction or a piece of biography. So we really want you to relish the readings. We've been thoughtful about those. So do you have any burning questions here? Anyone have? Yes? I don't know anything about that. We've asked. It doesn't work for this class. Okay, sorry. You'll have to rent it or buy it. Okay, any other questions? Okay. So here's my burning question for your Iclicker challenge today. Are you ready? Get your Iclicker out. Here's the question. According to Jonathan Latham, the food movement is different from other social movements because A, it's a leaderless movement. B, it's based on a biological understanding of the world. C, it's international and low budget. D, all of the above. E, I don't know, I didn't do the reading. So let's test the Iclicker again, and we'll come back to you with the poll. About 10 seconds. So do you switch this here? Go here.
So we'll do that in 1 second. 45 seconds.
Just do a minute.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that's good. Okay,
Okay.
we're closing the poll. Pretty good response.
D. That's correct. 94 of you got it right, and 10 of you were honest. Thank you. So that's how that works. We'll try to make it fun, and we'll try to create a useful question for you to stir you up and get you thinking. Okay, so onward. I'm hoping that, in some ways this class will be sobering. Some of the topics we're going to be discussing are very concerning, very challenging. I don't know if you saw the news today, but we just hit the record temperatures for the 3rd consecutive year and more. So scientists are getting quite concerned that their climate models may actually underestimate the potential. And as you'll learn during this semester that food is implicated in everything: health and sustainability, labor, nutrition, well-being, everything is connected. I wanted to just read to you this quick excerpt from the Civil Eats article we sent you. You can't fix agriculture without addressing immigration and labor, or without rethinking energy policies. You can't improve diets without reducing income inequality, which in turn requires unqualified equal rights for women and minorities. You can't encourage people to cook more at home without questioning gender roles or the double or triple shifts that poor parents often must accept to make ends meet. You can't fully change the role of women without tackling the future of work, childcare, and education. You can't address climate change without challenging the power of corporations and their control over the state, and not so incidentally, without challenging big food. The fight for healthy diets is part and parcel of these other struggles, and it will be won or lost alongside them. It's all connected. The common threads are justice, fairness, and respect. A sustainable food system cannot exist inside an unsustainable political or economic system. I don't know anyone who has spent more time in their lifetime making sure that people understand these messages. I had the good fortune of meeting Alice Waters in 1990. I'll never forget that. This is Alice receiving the National Humanities Medal from President Obama just a couple years ago. But I was struggling to think about how to introduce Alice for our class tonight, and I thought there's one person who is absolutely immortal now, who many of you probably had known or heard of, but some of you may not have. So I thought I would just play you a little introduction to start our program tonight. Just give me 1 minute to... A little prayer for PBS. It's worth waiting for. Maybe not. Bob? Where's Bob? It worked a minute ago. It always does that. Does it do that to you too? Cal Visitor. The old Cal Visitor switch, they don't even tell you it's happening. Uh-oh. All right, Alice, if this doesn't work, we're going to have to... But this is real. I love this. Here it is. 1994.
Waters started a revolution in 1971, but like Alice herself, it was a gentle, quiet uprising. When she opened her now legendary restaurant Chez Panisse in Berkeley across the bay from San Francisco, she'd already made a commitment to serve only the finest and freshest of ingredients. Of course, this is only possible when fine, seasonable produce is available. And with Alice at the forefront, an increasing number of chefs around the country have been encouraging a network of farmers, ranchers, and fishermen to provide them with the best. Her philosophy was simple. If there's a real demand, then the farmers will plant it, and if we ask for it often enough, we'll get it. It's not surprising that Alice Waters should teach a nation how to eat, since teaching has been her life. After graduating from the University of California at Berkeley, she spent time in London training at the original Montessori school, and then she traveled to France, where she fell in love with the country, the people, and the food. Returning to Berkeley to finish her studies, she began cooking French dinners at home for friends. Soon friends began bringing friends and friends of friends, and Alice found she had to charge for her meals. Thus, literally and gradually began Chez Panisse. Alice Waters has become a benign legend, an icon, and I think we're fortunate indeed that she's consented to be with us on our MasterChef series, to share some of her thoughts and feelings and her techniques with food. Before I joined her in her home kitchen, Alice took me shopping at her favorite local market, where, as she said, we'll let the vegetables lead us around. With beautiful fresh produce, the presentation can be as simple as this fragrant fennel salad she's about to show us, with its fresh mushrooms, aromatic Parmigiano Reggiano cheese, and fruity olive oil. We bought this fennel today. Now what are you going to do with it?
Well, this is a wonderful winter vegetable. It's really my favorite. And we're going to make a fennel salad by slicing the fennel very, very thinly. And I think that slicing it that way gives a whole different texture to a salad,
Well,
and it makes you...
nibbling, and it makes a different taste,
right.
I think. Now, one question is, this is so young and tender, but most in the market.
I don't want to make you too hungry. I just love that when Julia Child eats a thin slice of fennel as if it's a brand new vegetable. I think that was one of the greatest moments. So without further ado, it's a great pleasure to welcome the standard bearer, Alice Waters.
Oh, I haven't seen that film in so long. You can't imagine. Well, the next thing that happened is I was pitting the olives, and I was doing it. I hit them with a knife, and she said, "Oh, is that how you pit olives, Alice?" And I just thought, can I be straight with her? I mean, I mean, she would ask me these questions that, of course, she knew the answer, and I just had to play along with it. It was just like the fennel, but it was really amazing, really amazing. I'm very, very pleased to be here. I have to say, I have wanted this course to happen every year since that first one, which was the 40th birthday of Chez Panisse. And it wasn't really my idea, it was my colleagues' idea. Katrina and Carolyn, who are part of the foundation. And they knew that I wanted to figure out how to get a course into the University of California, so we met with Michael Pollan, and he agreed, and that's how it began. But it was a little bit endangered this year because we couldn't find somebody in a department who would take it on. And we are very happy that Will decided to do that. Now, the plan is that I'm going to read you a speech that I've been working on for some time. And then I'm going to talk with you a little bit about the Edible Schoolyard project. And then Will and I are going to sit over there, and we're going to answer your questions, we hope. And so that's the plan, and I'd like to begin right here. The French philosopher Brillat-Savarin said over 200 years ago the destiny of nations depends on the way they nourish themselves. I've always been struck by this phrase and used to think it had to do primarily with gourmet eating and refined dining. But over the years, and because of the work I've done with the people I've met in the food movement, I've realized that Briat-Savarin was speaking about something much more profound. He was addressing the fundamental ways we care for ourselves, for each other, and for the planet. I think if he were alive today, he would say, quote, "The destiny of the world depends on how we nourish ourselves." Or at least, I hope he would. You see, I think he might have felt that all the serious problems that we face today, obesity and diabetes, addictions, depression, pesticide use, GMO, the economy, land use, water use, fair wages for workers, violence, terrorism, poverty, childhood hunger, the overarching fear of climate change, you name it, all of these issues, each and every one of them are outgrowths of a much bigger, more encompassing problem. They're the consequences of a much more fundamental thing, a deeply rooted systemic condition that provides the soil, if you will, that all of these other terrible things come out of. And unless we deal with the deeper, larger, more pervasive condition, I feel that all of our well-intentioned attempts to solve the problems of this world will ultimately fail. It's like treating the symptoms of a disease without dealing with the root causes of the disease itself. Now, I've been making this speech on this subject for the last few years and trying to refine this message. In fact, I'm in the process of really putting it down visually in a manifesto so everyone can easily understand what I want to speak to you about today. I've given a version of this speech to most of the edible education courses that came before you. So bear with me if you have heard some of it before. But I don't think that anyone can hear enough of it. It's what edible education is fundamentally about, and in my opinion, why it's so necessary. So, what is this deep systemic condition that underlies all of our problems, that's at the root of them? The author Eric Schlosser, one of my personal heroes and one of the great muckrakers of our times, and also will be a speaker at this series, has pointed out that in the United States, we live in fast food nation. Fast food, sad to say, is the dominant way people eat in this country. Most people don't understand this. And what I'm not sure you realize, and it's something that I've just come to realize over the last decade or so myself, is that fast food is not only about food, it's much bigger. It's way bigger. It's about culture. Fast food not only affects our diets, it also affects our rituals, our traditions, our behaviors, our relationships, expressions, laws, ways of working, systems, and ways of doing things. The effect of fast food doesn't just happen in chain restaurants along freeways or in malls or in airports. It permeates everything from the way we look at the world to the way we operate in it, to how we see ourselves, how we express ourselves, to the way we do business, to our architecture, to our entertainment, our journalism, or how we treat each other, how we interact with each other, or, in many cases these days, how we don't interact with each other. The clothes we wear, what we buy and sell, our parks, our schools, our politics, and the list goes on. Fast food culture has become the dominant culture in the United States. And I worry that it's becoming the dominant culture of this world. I have to have one sip of water. There's my glass. Oh, I think it left it over here. This is the bigger condition, the soil, that I feel all of the other problems grow out of. Fast food culture. You see, like all cultures, fast food culture has its own set of values. Fast food values, I call them. And these values saturate our way of thinking and inform our way of doing things so thoroughly that in my mind, we don't even see them anymore. They're just part of our makeup, part of the landscape, part of our biology at this point, and I fear part of our daily lives. And they completely degrade our human experience. An example of a fast food culture value is uniformity. The idea that everything should be the same no matter where you go. You know, the pizza you get here on Telegraph Avenue should be exactly like the one you get in Tokyo. The t-shirt you buy in Brooklyn should match exactly the one you have in Sydney, Australia. Or there's something wrong with it. It's not a cool thing. And we take this value for granted. We actually like it a lot. It thrills us. It's modern. It comforts us. But like all fast food values, uniformity masks deeper, darker issues. And in this case, I would say, the pressure to conform, the loss of individuality, or the respect for uniqueness, even prejudice and control. All eggs should look the same. All houses should look alike. Everyone should look the same, or you report them. Speed. Now, speed is another fast food value. Things should happen really fast. The faster, the better. And I have to confess, this is me. You order it, you want to get it. You want it, you should have it. Right then, no waiting. The faster something's done, the better. And when we live like this, I fear that not only do our expectations get warped, but we also become easily distractible. We lose our sense that things take time, that the best things take time, like growing food or cooking or learning or growing a business or getting to know someone. These days, if there's not instant gratification, we get frustrated. There's no maturity, no time for reflection, no patience. The faster it's delivered, the faster it's communicated, the more valuable. Time is money. How many cows can you slaughter in the slaughterhouse in a day? How many patients can you see in an hour? How fast can you down your lunch? Availability. Availability, that's another fast food value. The idea that we should be able to get whatever we want, wherever we are, whenever we want it, 24/7. We should be able to get a tomato in Switzerland in the middle of winter. We should be able to get Evian water in Nairobi. We should be able to get a peach in Berkeley in February. You should have cell phone coverage wherever you go. I guess I know that one. This twisted idea of availability to me not only spoils people, but causes them to lose track of where they are in time and space. Seasons stop mattering. What's indigenous to certain places becomes unclear and almost irrelevant. There's always a feeling that there's something better over there. local culture and the specialness of what's happening here and now becomes less important than that big, homogenized, fast food, get anything you want global reality, or in my view, unreality. Being present to what's going on around you is devalued. I mean, just look at about how many people are looking at their cell phones as they walk down the street. I'm not even sure that they're aware where they are. Yes, and how many of you are checking your cell phones right now? Go ahead, you can check them. Cheapness. This one drives me crazy. In the United States, there's a complete mixing up of the idea of affordability with cheapness. There's a deep feeling that value is equated with bargains. No one understands the real cost of things anymore because, one, nobody tells them, and two, everything is priced artificially, supported by subsidies and corporate sleight of hand and credit. Because I believe in paying people for the true cost of their work and their products, people say that I'm driving up the prices of food in the markets. I say it's the discounted prices that are artificial. I feel it's my responsibility to pay the real cost of food if I can. Now, there was a great op-ed in the New York Times about a year ago. You might have read it. A small organic farmer described quite eloquently how he and many other farmers he knew needed to work 1 or 2 jobs to keep their farms going. And he said it was a myth that small farmers like his were making it. Well, I think it wouldn't be a myth if the farmers were paid appropriately for the beautiful food that they provide for all of us. The truth is, and it's something that we all need to learn, things can be affordable, but they can never be cheap. When I hear somebody say, I just got it cheaper over there, I just feel intuitively that somebody somewhere is being sold out. You cannot not pay for something here without someone over there not getting what they deserve. You cannot not pay for something here and not expect to have other problems in your life over there, like around the environment or your health or international relations or human rights, for that matter. In the end, all of these deals cost us much, much more money, all of us. And I think we know deep down, we just don't want to face it. There are many other fast food values, and I'm sure you can identify some for yourself. Like I said, they're invisible at first, but once you start to notice them, you see them everywhere. It's quite shocking. Work is drudgery, that one. Many of us accept this as natural. I assure you, work doesn't have to be drudgery unless you're in a system created or supported by a fast food culture. Work, in my mind, though at times difficult, should actually provide a sense of value and accomplishment, and a sense of purpose and satisfaction, a certain kind of pleasure. Fast food culture, by its very nature, for its very survival, strips work of all of these possibilities. It makes us all believe that work should be something degrading and meaningless and hollow, a job just to get us through, to make money. Fast food culture bleeds us of our humanity as we work within it. And then sadly, as we work inside that culture, we inadvertently strengthen it and trap ourselves inside. And what really gets to me, that after they've convinced us that work is drudgery, fast food culture then provides us with those pleasures to fill the emptiness of the dissatisfied work life. So these pleasures, well, like, for example, fast food. and the incessant gaming and TV binge watching and hours on Facebook and alcohol and drugs and cruise ships and all of the rest that I like to call consumption vacations, where people just gorge themselves to make themselves feel better. And some of those spring break vacations kind of look like that. Basically, the way I see it, fast food culture separates work and pleasure for us and then profits from the separation. More is better. More is better. That's another fast food value. The more you pile on your plate, the happier you'll be. The more massive the store, the better. The more apps you have, the more connected you're going to be and fulfilled. Basically, the more you have and the more choices you're offered, the better. Now, I find this value so strange because to me, when I get too much stuff, too many choices, I get overwhelmed and feel burdened by them. There's no room for discernment. There's just weight and volume. At Chez Panisse, we used to be criticized so much for having only one menu. But it was the only way that I could simplify things and guide people towards what I wanted them to taste and to feel and to know about. Now people look forward to one menu so they can focus on tasting something that maybe they wouldn't have chosen for themselves, something that surprises them or delights them, something that they can savor and remember. Now, I heard an interesting thing the other day, a while ago, actually, it was. There's a chain of restaurants that are in England and in the United States. And in the restaurants in England, they serve half the amount that they do for the restaurants in the United States. And I don't know what the moral of this story is exactly, but I don't think it is more is better. As you know, we have an obesity epidemic in this country, and I think it's intimately connected with the idea that more is better. It's a physical manifestation of it. Now, some fast food values are more abstract and elusive, like terminology, for instance, and how it is used or misused, and the confusion around it. I mean, what does organic mean these days? Natural. For that matter, what does local mean? Or fair trade? Or even fresh? It seems like the definition of these terms has been hijacked, and they seem to fluctuate and have more to do with marketing and presentation than they have to do with an effort to clarify and inform. And what's scarier is how fast these terms get hijacked. In my field, when we see a new term that works, like sustainability, it gets grabbed immediately by the fast food culture, and it's used everywhere indiscriminately. And in no time, the term becomes misleading and cloudy and meaningless. And there are many other slippery terms that I'm aware of. How about pesticide-free or FDA-approved? How about the last honest pizza? Behind the terminology is the issue of standards. What standards are we really using, and where did they come from? There seem to be standards, but they don't mean anything, or worse, they reduce standards. Like in the case of schools that manipulate standards in order to receive financial aid. Or food companies that lobby to get chemicals considered as natural ingredients in their products. In other cases, it seems to me, we're too willing to compromise or to change our standards or abandon them altogether. We serve filtered water at Chez Panisse mainly because we don't believe that the water that comes out of the fountains is really safe. And we're not so sure about Now I confuse that. We serve filtered water at Chez Panisse. We don't serve bottled water. We serve filtered water at the restaurant because we aren't sure about the city water is really what they say it is. And we're not so sure about that term grass-fed. You can use that term even if the animals are only grass-fed for 2 weeks. And in so many cases, it's a lie. Another fast food value, dishonesty. And maybe this is the biggest one of all. Something that's really been concerning me these days is the idea of advertising and branding. Companies get you to feel so familiar with their brand and their ads that when you come across an ingredient that looks slightly different or unfamiliar, you don't trust your own personal judgment about it. And because it doesn't have a brand, you think that there's something wrong with it. You lose your confidence and you decide its worthiness. You don't have the confidence to decide its worthiness. This is a great example of how disempowering fast food culture can be. Well, I saw a bumper sticker a long time ago. Maybe you saw it too. It said, "If we are what we eat, then I'm fast, cheap, and easy." And I don't think I can say it any better than that. The reason that these values are so important to me is because they shape behavior. So if a culture around us is glamorizing and promoting values that dehumanize us, all of us, naturally we're going to learn dehumanizing behavior. And if we act in ways that dehumanize us, all the problems that I was talking about at the beginning of this talk can't help but occur. They're all actually problems of dehumanization. So yes, there is a fast food culture, and yes, it permeates every aspect of our life. Fortunately, there is an antidote: slow food culture. Slow food culture is not as flashy or as aggressive as fast food culture, but it's just as enticing and addictive, I'd like to say. It's a richer, deeper, truly affirming and fulfilling culture. Ripeness is a slow food value. The idea that there is a particular moment when the essence of something is at its prime and its greatest expression with the most vitality and power in it. When something is ripe, whether it's a fruit or a creative idea or a political movement, it means that it has reached its peak performance level. It's ingested all of the nutrients, integrated and metabolized all of its resources, and is ready to flourish and give naturally. If something is not ripe, it's not ready. It's still weak and underdeveloped, pretending to be ready, just in the shadow of what it could be. And ripeness may sound esoteric, but it's a value that means there's a ripe time for everything, and it's important to discern what that time might be. Cherries are most vibrant in the spring, and a couple is ready to get married at a certain moment. The time is right for political change, and I have to say, I'm feeling that right now. Actually, I'm always feeling that. Interconnectedness is another slow food value. The realization that we're all connected to each other and everything around it. The feeling of being supported by and dependent upon something bigger than ourselves, like our deep connection to nature. When we really feel interconnectedness, you want to take care of things. It naturally and pleasurably leads to responsibility and empathy and love. And you make sure that the water upstream is clean so that the farmer downstream grows better food. And you make sure the information you pass on through the social media is beneficial to people, not abusive or cruel to the whole network. There is no true environmentalism without a sense of interconnectedness. Personally, I've never understood how one could call oneself an environmentalist when they don't eat consciously, and vice versa. How can you eat conscientiously and not consider yourself an environmentalist? Eating connects you with everything on the planet, almost by definition. So how you're eating and how you're connecting with the planet is so important. When you're connected in a positive way to where your food comes from, you actually digest, you literally digest the environmental qualities of the food. We literally are what we eat. Thankfully, slow food values are intrinsic to us. We're born with them. They're part of our biological makeup, at the very core of our essence. They've just been covered up and deadened by the assault of the fast food culture around us. And they're just waiting to be awakened. And it just takes a spark. Maybe it's the taste of an apple pie right out of the oven, or a walk through the redwood groves here on campus right after the rain. A smile on your sister or brother's face when you come home from school. The feeling of a young kid sitting on your lap and you're reading to them. Once you've awakened slow food values in your life, you can't let go of them. You want more, and they grow in you and they become alive in you, and your perspective shifts and your behavior changes and your existence brightens in lots of ways without any effort. That's what happened to me when I went to France when I was 19. It really did. It was like, well, I think of it like the earth as being parched, and a field that's watered, it just comes back to life. And it's always, I always say it's like falling in love. That used to be easy, remember? Well, my journey at Chez Panisse is a good example of how awakening slow food values can change things. And I'm sorry to use Chez Panisse, but it's the only business example I know. I've been doing it for 45 years. When we started in '71, we weren't really trying to start a revolution, or maybe we were a little. What we were really trying to do was recreate a way of life I'd experienced in France as a student. And that's how we lucked out, because France at that time, this was in the early 60s, France was a slow food culture. French people lived in a different way, moving in different rhythms. So they focused on different values. And by trying to recreate the European cafe life, we at Chez Panisse, without really thinking about it, naturally expressed slow food values in every decision we made. And I'm not talking about monumental decisions here. I'm talking about what kind of chairs should we get for the dining room? Ones that reflect craftsmanship and beauty? Or do we put in plastic chairs that reek of uniformity and mass production? Let's get mismatched, hand-turned antique silverware. We bought it at the flea market, which, by the way, was much more affordable and beautiful, instead of the industrial restaurant supply flatware. Let's put freshly picked flowers on the table to remind ourselves what season we're in. And let's really consider the music we're playing in the background so that it brings people alive and doesn't drown out their conversations. Now, these small, very personal decisions were like magic because, like I said, they had slow food values embedded in them. The same thing happened in the kitchen. We started cooking over a fire and foraging for food in the nearby hills. They were full of chanterelles back then. And have you been out since the rain, anybody? Because the hills are full of chanterelles right now. And connecting with the local organic farmers, pulling oysters right out of the water the day we got them and served them. Because that's the way that they had done it in France. I wasn't, and this is very important, I wasn't interested in making money. Can you imagine? Not at all. I've never been. The priority was to make sure that things tasted good. If it took too much olive oil, well, too bad. We just used too much olive oil. Well, thank God we made money, ultimately. But I think if you do things with integrity and purity, things always turn out. And what I mean is you end up with more than a business. You end up with a way of life that supports you and nurtures you and inspires you. I can almost cry at that. So, this is why I so profoundly believe in edible education. I really feel if you understand and put into practice these kinds of things that I'm talking about, a new kind of learning and living will become, as Michael Pollan would say, second nature to all of you. I don't know how many of you know, but I was a Montessori teacher before I opened Chez Panisse. I had seen firsthand how Maria Montessori's methods of teaching worked. Montessori was, by the way, she liked food. She liked food. But, you know, she was Italian. It was so important to the Italian culture, by the way, that they put her on the money. She was on the lira note. Unfortunately, it's a euro now, so she's not there, but she used to be. And Montessori's philosophy is based on an experiential education of the senses. See, hear, touch, smell, taste. The senses are our pathways into our minds. And I believe, and I've seen, that when students' senses are stimulated and open, not only does their learning improve, but they also get a clearer perspective on the world and their place in it. It is a tried and true pedagogy that first worked. This is a very interesting story because it first worked in the slums of Rome, near Naples, and in India, and with children whose senses had been closed down because of the poverty and the harshness of their lives. Today, students' senses are closed down in similar ways, many by poverty and violence, but all by their unwitting indoctrination to fast food culture. Think about it. Every moment of our lives we're confronted with it. On TV, on the computer, in our textbooks, our smartphones, in our music, on our clothes, in the advertising inside school hallways, with the corporate branding of our favorite sports teams, all the events, and with all the fast food and soft drink concessions on every corner. Even in drugstores, in parks, it's really inescapable. So it's not just gardens in schools that are going to be able to address the deeply entrenched issues of the fast food culture. I'm not talking about a special environmental awareness class or improving the food service on campus. I'm not. Though these things are part of it, I'm talking about something more profound, awakening the senses of the students. And I'm talking about a larger, more radical approach to changing the face of schools by integrating slow food values into all aspects of scholarly life. It's about changing the pedagogy, the philosophy behind what we teach, how we teach it, and where we teach it. It's about reimagining schools from the ground up. There have always been two interrelated strands running through this food movement. On the one hand, there is the visible one, the one that you're all familiar with, which involves the dramatic changes, the rise in popularity we've seen over the last 50 years in terms of cooking and farming and eating, food awareness and taste and restaurant styles and attention to ingredients and lifestyle patterns and cooking shows, etc. And the second strand is the political and the philosophical strand, and the one that addresses larger social and environmental issues like food safety and economic fairness, health, pollution, pesticide use, and workers' rights and international trade relations. Well, Chez Panisse has always had its feet planted firmly in both camps. We were born out of the activism in Berkeley in the 60s. Though we were cooks first, we understood quite quickly that the political affected what was on the plate. And also vice versa, what was on the plate enticed and drew people into the politics of the day, seduced them, if you will. What was on the plate, no matter how tasty and beautiful, was always a call to action. And we need that call to action more than ever. Now, an amazing thing happened at Chez Panisse 3 years ago, January 7th, 3 years ago. We had a beautiful dinner for all the chancellors of the University of California and the president of the university, Janet Napolitano. And of course, I knew what this meant, that this was a place where we could create positive, visionary change. So I wanted this dinner to be very, very special. And I always feel better when I'm feeding people ideas rather than just talking to them. So it was crab season, and we had this beautiful crab salad, and we had chickens that were roasting on the spit in the fireplace, and everybody could see that from the dining room. And for dessert, there was a warm apple tart with some honey ice cream for dessert. And there were two big, long tables, and we were talking about how to prepare students for the world and how we were going to integrate these big ideas that I've been talking about into the whole university system. And I was worried that there wasn't going to be this sense of urgency that I feel. So I just invited Michael Pollan there for insurance. And the evening was magical, and it was going just the way I hoped. But I never imagined that Janet Napolitano would stand up at the end of the dinner, and she said, I want to create a compact for sustainability. And she said that she wanted to have everyone commit themselves to assembling, I want to quote this right, a university-wide initiative to focus on the scientific, cultural, environmental, sustainable, and health actions aspects of food. And she wanted this to be accomplished by 2025. For me, it was really an historic moment. It was like signing the Declaration of Independence. And it showed me, she went around, she wrote it down by hand, and she went around the whole room, and everybody signed. And it showed me that it's possible to create dramatic change. But we have to imagine it in order to create it. And these ideas that I've been talking about, done with justice and beauty, really inspire people. And then everybody feels compelled to make them happen. So what's so great about the food movement is it can inspire people beautifully and pleasurably, seduce them back to a better, more human way of life. And that's why I call it a delicious revolution. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Now, yeah, well, right now I'm going to show you a video of the Edible Schoolyard project and just show you a few slides and talk about them informally for a few minutes before we have the questions. But let me turn out that light.
Edible education is an education in life. How to grow up and be healthy.
Food is the conduit. Food is the icebreaker. Food is what brings people together.
We invite students into the classroom and we invite them to fall in love.
The garden becomes your teacher. It's that garden that teaches the values that we need to live on this planet.
Edible education is not an add-on. It's not something extra that you might put into your school. It's actually at the heart of your school.
Food connects us to politics, it connects us to the environment, it connects us to the health of our families and of our communities and of our planet.
Having independence about what food you choose and why you choose it and how to make it makes us better citizens in the world in which we live.
There is not a single academic subject that cannot be enlivened and enriched through edible education.
We use the act of growing food as a medium for teaching science, for teaching math, for teaching collaboration and how to work with people who are different than you.
Edible education is interactive. And so you're not thinking of a classroom as just chairs and tables and somebody in the front teaching. This is a whole different kind of pedagogy.
Many kids aren't inspired by paper and pencil, but are inspired by the paper and pencil when it's connected to something real. Edible education has changed my idea about what education is and what it could be.
When children are scheduled to go into the garden or the kitchen, their attendance is perfect. They do not miss school on the days that they are coming to the kitchen.
Edible education is also really integrally involved with what's happening in that cafeteria.
I can go into a district, I can change all the systems that are needed. I can change the facilities, I can change the food, I can train the staff. But if I don't have that student engagement piece, they're just not going to eat it. Edible education gets kids excited about eating real food.
Over the last 2 decades, the amount of inquiry that we have around how do I do this in my community? How do I set it up? What do I need to know? It became so overwhelming. So in 2009, we decided to create the Edible Schoolyard Academy.
Welcome. Really glad you're here.
Are you here also for the academy?
Yeah.
Hi. Jason. Liz. Nice to meet you too.
We take 100 people who come to us from all over the world and we distill everything that we know and share it. One of the wonderful things about this work is that it's applicable to every person and to every community.
My name's Jake Perrin. I'm from North Country Schools in Lake Placid, New York.
Patrick Caulfield, and I work at the Baltimore Montessori Public Charter School.
I live in Denver, Colorado.
I'm a chef and restaurateur in Sacramento, California.
I'm from the David School, which is in David, Kentucky.
We're a team from Salmon, Idaho. Salmon School Garden Project, and we're just starting a brand new school garden program.
It's been really great to share ideas and share resources and just realize that you're not alone. It's inspiring to be a part of this wildfire of change.
I'm taking these notes, I'm taking pictures, and I'm sending them back to my colleague. I'm like, we got to implement this. We have to do this.
I don't think I've ever been to a conference that so filled up both my heart and my head. I've just been so excited every day to be here.
When we first started our school garden, it seemed like a daunting task, and now it kind of seems like we can do this.
People come from around the country, from around the world, to feel part of a movement.
In 2012, we had 600 programs on the Edible Schoolyard Network. Now we have 5,000 programs. It's not going to be very long before we have 50,000 programs.
This edible education movement is picking up steam.
We want every school in America to have an edible schoolyard. Every child in this country deserves an edible education.
We need to do what JFK did back in the 60s. He wanted physical education to be taken by every student as part of the core curriculum. We really need to do the same thing for edible education. Nothing is as powerful as an idea whose time has come.
That's really lovely.
Right. Well, I wish I were feeding you all these ideas. Health?
That's what happens on Vimeo when you don't stop it. Do you want to sit and talk a little bit?
I was just going to briefly, I said that there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. But since that film was made, we have a better idea, and its time has come, and that is to make school lunch part of academia, to take it out of the fast food circumstance and connect it with the academic courses. And so this is how, let's go to the next, deliciously. Let's go to the next slide, which just shows you a placemat that we made when we were practicing this idea at the Edible Schoolyard Project. Now this may be a history class, and everybody is eating the same food. Maybe it's a lentil soup, maybe it's a chapati, maybe it's a carrot salad with cumin. But they're learning about this at the table. And it's not a 15-minute period, it is an hour and 15 minutes. And it uses the academic minutes, and every child will be fed for free at school. And the idea is that the criteria for that food would be to buy local, organic, everything for the schools. So in a way, schools will support, schools will support farmers, and farmers will bring their values into the schools. Let's show another one. We've been making placemats about a geography class, for instance, and you're talking about what grows and what places in the Middle East. Maybe you're having a tabbouleh salad, and you're having a pita bread and some yogurt spiced, and you're eating that culture. Let's go quickly on this one. It might be a language class, and you're speaking in Spanish, and you're eating the food of that place. And likewise for another geography class. But this idea of making food part of academia is something really, really, I think, powerful. And I think it's going to really not only support those farmers who take care of the land,
but it's going to really deeply nourish the students. And 20% of the kids are in school right now. Just imagine, it could change agriculture overnight. Now, I'm just hoping that the University of California can take the lead, show us the pathways, and that our enlightened government in the state of California can really make a case for feeding every child and ending childhood hunger and bringing justice to the public school system. Amen.
Amen.
That's what a lunch looks like.
How about that? Can you hear me? You hear me? Yeah, good. You know, watching the fast food values made me realize how automatic they all become. And I was thinking of speed. And with speed now, not only do we experience things going fast, but we're also multitasking all the time. And one of the things that, you know, I work really hard on now is to make sure that when I'm eating, for sure, that I'm concentrating on eating so that I can enjoy it. How many people eat with their cell phone? Come on. Yeah. So this
And under the table.
if you go to Chez Panisse, they have a little thing in bold letters on the menu that says, don't take your cell phone out here. But there's just something automatic. And then I was thinking about, you get speed, you get multitasking, and then you get transactional, you know, in speed. Like you have that picture of the, you know, driving through.
Time is money.
Time
is money.
And the thing that's interesting, I was reading the other day that you know, we're just really in the very early years of living with the internet. And it's been set up now on a model of monetization. So people are trying to get our attention and then somehow monetize that. So people are working 24/7 to figure out how to get us to click on something else that's going to result in a transaction. And I think to your point, the slow food value is about interconnection, which is really about relationship. So I guess the question I have, Alice, for you is, you graduated from here in 1967. You were at the height of the civil rights movement. We had a war. How do we today, how do we take the impetus of knowing what we know? How do we band together? How do we, as Michael Pollan and Mark Bittman said in that article, find our allies? What is it going to take now, despite the fact that we're going so fast, we're distracted, we're multitasking, we're doing all these things? How do we pay attention to really take this food movement and really make it central?
Well, as I said, I think we have to come back to our senses, back to that place. And I can't think of a better way to do that than to cook together and eat together. I really can't. Whenever I'm having a gathering at my house, I go to the market and farmer's market and I bring the food back. And all my friends know that they're going to be part of the cooking process. And we just talk and cook together, and then we all sit down. And and then we all clean up. We turn on the music and clean up. And it's so essential to me, that gathering. I can never let it go. I mean, I would like to really eat like that every single night. I mean, it normally happens a couple times a week, but I would like it every night.
It looks like it's going to happen in this class tonight. What was your idea here, Alice?
Well, my idea, and I have a whole other box out there, is you guys can come and take whatever you want from my farmer's market stand there. And see what you can find a place to cook. But I would like it in the dining halls. to have a meal, one meal a day, where everybody eats the same thing. Like I'm talking about for the edible schoolyard, where everybody sits down at the table. That used to be the way things happened at the universities around the world, that there was that set meal where everybody came. I mean, lunch was something else, but dinner, you need that punctuation in the day, or it's just like a run-on sentence. It just keeps going. You never stop. And I think making time and just putting the phone and everything aside and eating a meal. But
well, let's talk about that for a minute, because you know there's a lot of research now showing that it's during your college years that your whole behavior about how you're going to eat for the rest of your life kind of gets codified. And so this time now, these 3, 4, 5 years that you're at university, becomes so important to become aware of this. And I think what Alice just said is really interesting. If you think about this, how do I take action? Could you ask for that? You know, could you go, this university is pretty responsive to students. So maybe there's a prompt there. Maybe you can go ask, would it be possible for this particular food facility on campus to serve a sit-down family-style meal?
Well, I have to add that in Janet's sort of declaration, she said she wanted to change all the buying of ingredients, all the food buying at the university, and purchase from organic local people. Now, I mean, that's something that you can definitely ask for. You can ask for real food. And I don't mean sort of real, because I don't mean natural and local. I mean organic. Because organic certification in California is very high. And that means no herbicides, no pesticides. I mean, it's got a lot of things involved with it. But I wanted to have farm workers' rights involved with whatever we do with the public schools as well, so we can lift up the farm workers' work at the same time.
Who's got a question for Alice? Don't be shy. Stand up, introduce yourself, and give us your question.
I'm Brad Wilson. I'm a farmer from Iowa. Thank you for letting me in here. There are a few empty seats because I kind of snuck. But, you know, I'm just kind of wondering how these things you're talking about so forth, you mentioned the local and organic a number of times. Great. You don't want to have too many organic farmers too fast, or you won't be, or there'll be oversupply and all will grow. It's not happening now, but
It won't ever happen.
so my question is, does your education include justice for the corn belt as a whole, for all farmers, for the wheat belt, for the cotton belt, for the dairy belt, for the western rangelands, for the because our interpretation is that it's the trauma against us that led to the Trump victory. And so if we're not a part of the justice of what's called the food movement instead of the food and farm movement, then you're not going to win anything politically, it looks like. Just what your thoughts are.
Well, my thought is to focus on public education. And, you know, just as you know about community-supported agriculture, I'm talking about school-supported agriculture. So no middleman between the farmer or the rancher and the schools. So you get paid the real cost of your work. And that this happens across the country. That we're not talking just about in the state of California. We're talking about California right now because I think we need to build those examples. But we have edible schoolyards in every state of the country. And if we were to understand that school lunch is the centerpiece of it, and that it's so important to the health of the students, And it's so important to the health of the land and your work. And that's that coming together that is essential for social justice and for the future.
I think the other piece is this is going to require a generational shift. I think the brilliance in the Edible Schoolyard project is it will create an appreciation, an expectation, and a demand that you're talking about is how do you meet supply and demand. USDA is moving, deliberately now. There's more money available to help farmers transition to organic. I think what Alice is doing is trying to stimulate a request for a particular type and quality of food. And I think, back to my earlier point, as we get to become more transparent about and do away with terminology, if we can, or at least
transparency.
Have
terribly important.
We will have soon. We'll have tools available to us, technologies available to us, which we might even get a chance to see this semester, that'll give us each as individuals power to identify what it is we have on our plate. Yeah, over here.
Thank you. My name is Ben. One question that I have is, for the Edible Schoolyard project, you talked about the importance of local foods and organic foods and various things like that. But in particularly urban areas and places that may not have local foods that may fit a curriculum for teaching about untold or various things like that, one, how do you reconcile that? And the other part of my question is, for areas that are in lower income areas and various things, how would this program work in going into those areas? Creating a garden and creating new curriculum would be awfully cost prohibitive. So what's kind of the solution for that?
Well, I think there's a lot in that, and it's a question that I'm asked very often. But we're talking about public education. And I think we have to think about public participation. And I've seen gardens go into schools very successfully when a community really wants that to happen. But I think we're all in a very, living in a fast food culture, and we don't cook anymore. Now, I just know that my most affordable meals happen because I know how to cook. I know how to take a chicken and make it for 3 meals. I know how to use all the stems of the chard. I know how to make something nutritious that is extremely affordable. And we're all, again, so busy that do you know that 1 in 2 families is divorced in this country? Just imagine what that means in terms of shuffling kids around, of having to have extra rooms for the kids in both places. And most people don't have time for dinner. 85% of the people in this country don't eat 1 meal together. Pardon me? How do you make the time? Well, I've thought about this a lot for myself. But I make time to go to the farmer's market. That's what I make time for. And I take kids with me. I took my kid with me whenever I went. And it's that connection that keeps you going back. It's a very nurturing experience to do that. Whereas going into the supermarket is the alienating one, the hassle, whereas the other one is really a good one. But I think the only way to really address all of these issues is in public schools and when kids are this big. And they can learn, and we're trying to put together a diet for public schools, not based on that pyramid, not based on that, based on basic foods that cultures have found nutritious for centuries. And the great news about it is everybody likes this food. They all like tortilla soup. They all like brown rice. They all like spices. They like whole wheat pita bread. They like hummus. You know, all of these things are, I think, very, very easy to prepare. Salads are. But you have to think in advance. You have to learn how to cook, and maybe we'll all learn how to cook along with the kids.
And if you go to PBS, you can learn how to cook that salad with the fennel.
No, don't look at that. But look at Jacques Pepin's cooking shows.
Yeah, one more and then we'll wrap up tonight. Yeah.
Thank you. My name's Elise, and one of your past food values was cheapness, and I was always raised to, if we can't afford to buy the wild caught or the organic, then we should do it. But a lot of us are college students, and one of my biggest issues is accessibility for people even poorer than we are. And you mentioned that that the reason that our food is so cheap is because of subsidies. Do you think that there's any step within your process that would include subsidies for the little guy to start, or are we trying to do away with that altogether?
No. I mean, not trying to do away with that altogether. I just think the subsidies need to go for all the staple foods that are organically grown. I mean, if I were in charge, that's what would have happened. But until we get there, we have to really think about the foods that are nutritious and affordable, really affordable. I mean, when you think about greens like these, like kale and garlic and brown rice, I could probably live on that. And it costs pennies compared to anything else. I mean, eggs, beautiful organic eggs. And I hope we can really put together a book of all of these ways to eat, you know, really something very agreeable. It's not like eating health food. You're eating the real thing.
And that's a wonderful question, which I think we'll be able to explore in subsequent
in
weeks.
The next classes.
We'll have next week. And maybe with that, I think just one of my tenets of having evening classes in particular, or any classes, start on time and finish on time. So we're going to do that. I want to just have a big round of applause for Alice. We're really grateful.
I'm serious. We have bags. We even have bags. You can take a bag of food.
I'm going to finish. Give me 1 minute. We're not quite done. Let me just give you a quick preview of next week, okay? And then we'll have you come down and fill your bags. This is David Masamoto. Please read his readings for next week. We've also invited A.G. Kawamura, who was the former Secretary of Agriculture for California. So next week we're going to focus on farming. There are readings that are listed in B courses and on the Edible Schoolyard site. And if you're interested in a seminar that I'm doing online, there's information there. And then the Take Action pledge tonight is just to call your attention to a wonderful and important website called Civil Eats. I think more now than ever, an independent press, not beholden to advertisers, is more important than ever. And there's a wonderful nonprofit called Civil Eats. It's civileats.org. It's a great source of information about the food movement and food justice. And it's something I just wanted to encourage you to check out. And if you're so moved, to subscribe. That might be your take action for the week. And without further ado, we will bid you good evening. And, Rohini. Okay. Thank you very much.
Great. Hi.